So we've highlighted 16 groups that each work with communities in completely different ways, all from the bottom up, all in a very grassroots way, but each through different mechanisms of collaboration.
Let's understand conflict, again, as a device to redefine architectural practice.
In fact, some of the people in this exhibition are not architects. I mean, Edible Schoolyard is run by a chef.
And so each of these projects, in a way, is situated in a different zone of conflict, responding to a different socioeconomic conflict, posing a possible solution.
I'm interested in understanding, for example, the impact of immigration from Latin America into the United States as immigrants begin to redefine the very nature of the American neighborhood.
Those that came to the exhibition in Venice would remember quite well the iconic border image by Teddy Cruz that covered the facade of the U.S. Pavilion.
That across those 60 linear miles we have a series of conflicts, a series of collisions between natural and artificial ecologies, between top-down urbanization and bottom-up social and ecological networks.
And so his image has embedded within it a narrative strip, and on that narrative strip is denoted the conflicts that define the territory.
Tijuana, for example, this Mexican border city, builds itself with the waste of San Diego as it recycles much of the leftover or the kind of urban debris of San Diego, garage doors, tires, entire houses that are moved from San Diego into Tijuana and so on. So these cross-border temporal, social, economic dynamics as these cities recycle themselves as well as they repel each other. I mean, this is what, again, shapes the nature of my practice.
It's a kind of off-putting image in saying that this is America at the moment, but I think once you pass through that wall, which is a scrim, then you walk in and you see Edible Schoolyard's vegetable garden for a middle school in Berkeley, California, and it's incredibly hopeful.
What we've done is we've invited the Yale Sustainable Food Project to grow plants and vegetables that would be native to New York. And that's what you see on display. We have grow lights, and we've created a microenvironment.
They took a schoolyard, tore up the asphalt basketball courts, and planted vegetables. And then the kids in the school raise the vegetables, grow them, they serve them in the school cafeteria, they recycle all the food, and then use it to fertilize the land. They're trying to teach not just where your food comes from, but a whole kind of process of eating well. So it's a really important issue about how to use public space.
One of the other projects that was incredibly well received in Venice was the work of Rural Studio, in particular the Hale County Animal Shelter that we featured. This is a county in which 30% of the families often live in trailers without plumbing, without public infrastructure.
People moving out of it because there was no economic resources there. They would leave and just leave their dogs behind, move off to some other place or a city, and then the dogs would become feral and attack the farm animals. It's
a project that was kind of undertaken to satisfy a municipal requirement that there be an animal shelter in Hale County.
One thing that's been interesting about Rural Studios is they've really been able to keep up an incredibly high level of architecture for a population that ordinarily doesn't see that kind of investment in design and ideas. And apparently there's a prison that's right next to this, which houses people in the most horrible kind of substandard living conditions. So in a funny way, once these dogs move in, they'll be living in a better, higher standard of living than these prisoners who live next door.
The work of Laura Kurgan in the Spatial Information Design Lab strikes a somewhat different tenor than the other projects in the exhibition.
Prison populations have risen from 200,000 in the year 1970 to upwards of 2 million in the year 2000.
In the case of her work with a Brooklyn community in particular, she spatialized data, and the data is actually the amount of money that's being spent to incarcerate individuals in particular communities.
In particular 11 blocks of Brooklyn, it cost $11 million plus or minus to incarcerate people from 11 census blocks. and we've called these $1 million blocks. On a financial scale, the prison is becoming the predominant governing institution in the neighborhood, but for lack of investment in resettlement, up to 40% of those who come home are eventually returned to prison.
It might seem to be critical of the city, but I think actually what we're proposing is very hopeful about the future of the city, because it's trying to engage the public in the creation of the city, and it's showing different ways to do that.
To look at conflict as the main instrument to redefine our idea of intervention in the city, to expose the crisis basically, what has produced the conflict in the first place.
I would hope that this would be able to begin a discussion between these two groups, you know, between these kind of formalist architects who would see this as being, yeah, interesting, but very worthy and politically correct and therefore not very interesting. And then these architects over on the other side who are committed community activists who want to have nothing to do with these formalist architects. And that's the wrong way for this to go about. Otherwise, the city just ends up, you know, suffering so that the rich get great architecture and the poor get half-timbered houses.